What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to another video, and thank you for joining me. My name's Jesse, and today we are tearing into my 2001 Dyna lowrider. I've had this bike for a few months now, and I've only ridden it a handful of times. There are a few reasons for that. One, I have a 24 Road Glide, which honestly, that bike is just fantastic any day of the week, so I end up riding it pretty much all the time. The other main reason is when I bought this bike, it was nowhere near set up how I wanted it to be. Sacked out seat, ape hangers, forward controls. We've taken care of the seat, we've taken care of the bars. Today we are getting rid of the forward controls and going with a nice set of mid controls. So you may be looking at the other side of the bike going, what are you talking about, dude? You already got mids on there. And you're right, I do on that side. I've had these parts basically since I bought the bike. I purchased them right away to do this job, and I've been putting it off because summer's been busy, but I got the itch a couple weeks ago to start on it, so I did pull off the forward controls on that side, and through the mid control mount, peg, brake arm, and brake linkage going to the master. But I did film that, so later in this video you will see that. But that was kind of the easy side. I wanted to knock it out and just kind of dive in so that now I have to do the other side. It sounds funny, but just to go for a ride on it, I ended up having mid control set up on this side. On this side, put the mid control mount and peg, but still have the forward control with shift linkage. So anytime I wanted to shift gears, I had to go for it. You know what? It's fun. This is a fun project bike to do silly things like that with. So today we are going to be tackling this B side, and it is kind of an involved process, which is why I wanted to bring you guys along for this video. The entire primary cover has to come off. The outer primary, the inner primary, your clutch basket, your compensator, that whole assembly, everything has to come off just to get to that shift linkage. And yeah, it's kind of a bummer, but we are going to end up doing some upgrades in the process. Along with, all new parts for all this stuff and gaskets and seals and whatnot, I do have a Baker bearing. It is an upgrade bearing because these are known to have a bearing that walks off of the shaft. So this is gonna be perfect. I'm gonna get to show you guys some stuff, learn some stuff, and yeah, should be good. So I'm gonna take you over to the bench, show you some of the tools that we have, some of the parts that we have, and we'll just start tackling it. All right, so in theory, there really is not much to this. You've got your primary gasket kit, complete with all the seals and stuff that you're gonna need. You have your shift linkage that is going to go from the back side through the primary cover. You have your primary cover piece. This is gonna go in replacement of our live to ride, ride to live brother cover, right? So that's gonna go right there. And then you have our Thrashin chrome shifter arm and our original garage shifter tip, and we have Thrashin linkage. You may be wondering why I kind of pieced things together from different companies, and to be honest with this, I am not being biased with the parts that I'm choosing to use on this bike. So Thrashin makes a nice chrome linkage, Original Garage does not. Original Garage makes the pegs that I wanted, so I went with those for that, along with a shifter tip. But we're using a Thrashin arm because Thrashin makes a nice chrome arm. So yeah, just a cluster of really nice parts that are all gonna come together and make the bike look good. Sometimes I get a little caught up in my OCD ways of trying to have every part be like matching brand, and that kind of limits my creativity. So pushing myself out of that comfort zone, and we're doing the thing. Really not much here on the bench. So like I said, in theory, there's not much behind it, but when you have to pull the whole outer primary, inner primary, all that, you get in deep, you could find more going on. And then obviously you also need to consider hardware. I pieced all this stuff together by choice. So I get more say in what goes into the kit, but inversely, you gotta go to Harley-Davidson and get hardware. You gotta go through a parts diagram, make sure you get the right stuff. So do it how you see fit. This is how I'm doing it. Along with all of the parts here for tools, we are gonna be needing one of these big giant sockets for the clutch hub nut. And then you're gonna need some sort of way of blocking the primary chain from rotating. A lot of different ways you could do that. You could use a wood block, however you want to do it, right? But that stuff's cheap on Amazon. You can get the name brand stuff if you want, but it's not necessary. So yeah, that's pretty much what we've got for the B side to get this done. Anything else we run into, I'll obviously let you guys know. I'll take you in and show you what we've got already for the mid-control mount and the OG peg. Really straightforward. Like I said, I got the hardware from Harley. The mounts are Drag Specialties, chrome, you know, cheapo, freaking $70 for the pair, I think, something like that. And then I just like the honeycomb design on the original garage peg, so that's why I went with those. So yeah, let's get over the bike, get it up in the air. Okay, so first step is gonna be draining the primary oil. On this setup, it is a T40 Torx. My Road Glide is a 5/8 hex head, so I'm not sure if all the drain plugs on Dynas are Torx bits, but that's what this is. We'll get this oil draining and then we'll take a look at the current forward control setup we have here. Oh yeah. Okay, so now that we've got the oil draining, we want to get this mid-control mount out of the way that I put on temporarily just to be able to ride the bike. That's going to be the peg as well, all one assembly there. Then we can get working on this forward control setup that we no longer want. By then, oil should be drained. We can pull the outer primary cover. Honestly, I don't even know if I'll pull the derby cover at this time because all of it's got to come off anyway. And we've got the oil draining, so yeah, probably just pull it off as one. So yeah, let's get started on this mid-control mount. Okay, next up is our forward control setup. Set of Allens here, 7/30 seconds, and then just the linkage up here, and it'll be ready to come off. This is gonna be really good because this is also going to free up this mounting location for a crash bar. I intend to do some very minimal stunting attempts on this, and the girlfriend will also be riding this, so we'd like to protect all the work that we're gonna be putting into this. I really don't have a true vision of how this bike is gonna end up. I don't know if it's gonna end up being like a real beater that we just play with, or you know, let everybody that I know ride it, or if we end up making it really nice, you know, paint job and all that, and I still end up letting everybody ride it. So yeah, but the end result is that I want to be able to protect the bike as best as possible with a crash bar, and these forward controls hinder that. All right, we got to get this linkage off. Looking at a 3/8 and a half here. Try not to cut my knuckles wide open on this freaking cylinder. And there we go. All right, next up is gonna be our primary cover. I really hope that we don't mess up any of this hardware. We're looking at a 3/16 Allen, so pretty small. There is a likelihood that maybe one of these snaps or rounds out, so just fingers crossed it goes well. We're gonna buzz these out real quick and we'll make a little bit of a mess, but no big deal. So, and then we will leave a couple still threaded in on top just so that nothing falls off. So there you see these two long ones do actually hold the cover on. So now we can break these last two bolts loose. And we'll get this thing over to the workbench. Okay, we have the outer primary cover off. Now the shoe has a little bit of wear, but it's negligible. It's nothing to where I'm gonna replace it. So yeah, this is gonna be good for the foreseeable future for me. We're gonna go ahead and pull this gasket and keep moving along. Next up, I'm gonna go ahead and relieve the tension on this clutch cable. That way there's no tension on our clutch basket itself, so that when we go ahead and break the stuff loose, nothing is getting slammed around. So now that we've relieved tension on the clutch itself, we can remove this circlip and our jam nut here. And our jam nut assembly here. Now we have access to our 30mm nut in our clutch side and our 1.5" on our compensator side. So this is going to be your regular, you know, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Our clutch is gonna be opposite. All right, we've got the bike dropped down for a little bit better leverage. We have our locking tool blocked in there. We're gonna need a little extension here. with our 30 mil. And as we talked about, this is going to be righty-loosey, lefty-tighty. Clutch is pretty much broke loose. I have the nut just holding it on from falling off. Now we need to tackle this compensator side, and this is nearly impossible. Dan has like all the Ugga-Duggas electric impact, and I may end up having to have him bring it over at a later date, because this is just, I've been trying to crank on it and it is gnarly. All right, I'm pulling out all the stops. If this doesn't work, I'm gonna need an impact. Woo! Just broke a 1/2-inch drive frickin' breaker bar on that, and it still won't break loose. So that's the stuff that nobody shows you in these videos. You watch these videos and people say, okay, now that I've broken torque, here's this. And it's like, oh, no. Be honest about it. So yeah, we're looking at probably needing a serious impact to get this off. So that kind of sucks. All right, well, just because we can't get that compensator off today, it does not mean that we cannot continue on with this job for now. The next thing on the list is going to be removing our starter. That has to come out because that is bolted into our inner primary. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and pull the starter. That way that's already done. That way when I get the impact from Dan, all I have to do is buzz the compensator off. All I have to do. And then I can pull that whole clutch, primary chain, compensator assembly, and unbolt the inner primary. So before removing our starter, I want to secure power, especially for a few days, since it's not gonna be, just a quick in and out thing. So we're gonna go ahead and remove the seat, disconnect our battery from the equation here, and then we won't have to worry about any of that stuff. So we've got a 1/2-inch socket that's going to allow us to drop our battery box down so that we have access to that negative battery terminal. So to remove our starter, we have a 1/4 Allen there and there. We're gonna use a swivel for that one. It's really not necessary. It's not too bad, actually. Some people complain about it, but really it's pretty straightforward with the right tools. I say that as I don't have all the right tools, but yeah, 1/4 inch, we've got a swivel and an extension, and that's all you're gonna need. No, I never had one of those.
And then you would, whenever you would learn a song, you would get the string and they would wrap it around the recorder. So then if you were a G with it, you would have all these different color strings because every color of string represented a different chord.
I know nothing about this at all. I played a xylophone in elementary school. Bing, boom, bing, 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 boom.
Yeah, see, this was like 6th grade.
Dumb. No clue. Nope.
Yeah. Wow.
All right, well, we have the starter loose, and that's kind of our stopping point for the night. This is as far as we can go without removing our compensator, and obviously we are not gonna be able to make that happen without some fancy freaking rent ramps. So yeah, this is it. Check in with you guys when I have Dan's impact. We'll bust this compensator off, then we can yank this, unbolt the primary, and that's it. It's really a bummer that that's the one thing that's really stopping us, but I don't see another way. All right, good morning, you guys. We are back, and we have Dan's all the Ugga-Duggas, all the torque impact. So hopefully this thing is going to zip the compensator right off, and we can continue on with this job, hopefully wrap it up today. So let's get this thing up in the air and see how it goes. All right, so we've got our locking tool, slip her in there, and we've got our 1.5 inch impact here. Fingers crossed this works, because I really do not have a backup plan. There we go. That's what we needed. All right, so now we should be able to pull, yep, our compensator and clutch assembly as one. Next thing I want to accomplish is pulling this inner primary. To do that, we need to get all of these tabs that are retaining these bolts from being able to spin bent over. Once we have those bent over, then we can get a socket on there and buzz all those bolts out real quick, and it should come right off. So you can see what we're talking about here. You got these tabs. Just have to get them enough out of the way that you can get a socket on there. And my kit did come with new ones. This is something that you're definitely gonna want to replace. You don't want these breaking off in your inner primary here. Okay, we've got our 1/2" socket here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or so inner primary bolts here. Okay, so now that we have our inner primary out of the way, we can see we have our inner race here. The outer race with the rollers is pressed into the primary itself, and so that slips on and then it rides on here. This inner race here, what'll happen is it'll walk one of two ways. It'll either walk in and destroy your transmission seal and you lose all your transmission fluid, or it will walk out and it will destroy your primary inner seal and you will lose all of your primary fluid. Either way, it sucks, and you can avoid that when you're already this far into the job by replacing it with a sealed bearing. I went with Baker Drivetrain. My uncle recommended it. He's the one who told me about this failure point, but Drag Specialties makes one. There are a few different options. I saw that's the one that Cruzy installed. So this is a known thing, and it's something that should be taken care of while you're in here. That's my recommendation. So yeah, we got to pull this off. First thing I want to do though is I want to get this thing in the freezer. Bearings, you can freeze them. They contract a little bit, just enough to make it a little bit easier to get them pressed into stuff like that primary housing, because the last thing we want to do is slam a steel bearing into an aluminum housing and crack it. So yeah, we're gonna stick this in the freezer, continue on with what we're doing here, give this thing a chance to hopefully shrink up a little bit. All right, we are gonna start working on these seals. Make sure you guys can see that okay. So here is our starter seal. Just going to get a little purchase on it there. And there she goes. So we should have one of those in the kit. Make note of that orientation with that lip seal and spring and all that. Okay, next we're gonna tap this seal out. Now you can see that we have another snap ring in here underneath this seal. I'm going to remove this side, and that's the side that I'm going to be pressing the bearing in and out of. So here's our piece that is on the shaft, and here is our outer that sits in that primary. That's how it normally sits, so it can completely ride right off of that inner race, and that's where you run into problems. Next thing we need to address here is what the previous owners did to block the hole where the mid controls were factory, and that is a bolt with a nylock, a washer, and some RTV. So we're gonna get this out of here and get this all cleaned up, because we're obviously going to be running our mid-control shift shaft through there as well as a seal. All right, very nicely done. It didn't leak, so there is that. Okay, well, as I said, I am figuring this out as I go. This is my first time doing a mid-control conversion on one of these bikes, and it's not gonna be done today. Another roadblock, but these things are to be expected. Right here, this boss, there is supposed to be a shift tube with 2 O-rings, and then there's supposed to be a retainer, just a steel retainer piece that bolts in here and holds that sleeve in place, so that when our shift shaft goes through here, it's not just so. There you have it. I ordered a billet aluminum shift shaft sleeve instead of a plastic OEM one from FXR division, as well as the retainer. I'm still gonna have to figure out a bolt, but no big deal there. So that is that. We're gonna continue on though. I do want to get as far as I can. You know, I've got that bearing in the freezer. We can get that back in the case here. Want to get everything cleaned up nicely, change out any gaskets or O-rings, you know, along the way. So it's kind of nice, I guess. Kind of forces me to take my time and do everything right and not cut any corners. So that's just what it is. We have the inner primary all cleaned up. We're ready to press that bearing in. I've got the surfaces all cleaned up. It's been sitting in the freezer for a few hours now. I have the underside of the primary sitting on a large socket. That way we're not slamming on this case with only the outer parts of the primary supporting it. Right where we are going to be applying pressure, we have it supported nicely. And this 2x4 is just keep everything flat. So perfectly smooth, good setup here. So we don't have to worry about hitting too hard and cracking this aluminum, because this is just, you know, poured aluminum, so it's not invincible. We see the stuff crack all the time. So yeah, hopefully this goes smoothly. Okay, we've got our bearing out of the freezer. We have a socket that is the right size of the outer race to be able to tap this in. Some people do this in a hydraulic press. It's probably a little bit safer, but I trust us. So yeah, we're gonna get this thing tapped in here, no problem. All right, a little bit of oil around this outer race. Shouldn't do any harm. As I said, our socket only lands on the outer race, not on the inner race at all. It's going in nice and straight. Looks like we're there. We have the bearing seated up against the circlip here, so we should be in good shape. We have new circlips that came in the kit, so I only removed the one side, so I'm not gonna finagle with the other. There's really no reason to. Same size, yep. So I'm just gonna slap this guy in there, and then our seal will go over the top. Okay, so we've got that circlip most of the way started. I know you guys are ready for this satisfying pop. Oof, that's nice. All right, so next up is our seal. It is different than the one that comes in our kit because we now have a different bearing style. A little bit of grease around the outer lip. Got a nice clean surface in there. And we're just gonna press that down. Make sure that's going in nice and straight. And right there's where it bottoms out. Next up, we have our starter seal, and we're gonna wanna find a socket that just seats on that rim. It's gonna have to be the perfect size, so see what we got. All right, it's going in. Wanna be careful to get it pretty even so we don't rip it. All right, that is flush with the casting there. Okay, now that we have our Baker bearing and seal along with our starter seal pressed into our inner primary, this thing should be ready to go on the bike once we get that shifter shaft, tube, and little retainer piece in the mail. Should be probably a week before we get that stuff, so whatever, no big rush. Thankfully, we've got the Road Glide to ride, so yeah, this thing's just gonna sit as is for a little bit. All right, we're back here in the garage, and hopefully today is the day we get to wrap up this mid-control conversion. It's been a few weeks since we worked on this project. I think I have everything now. I decided to reseal the transmission while we're in here. You really should. It's a few seals, and you know, they are a little bit prone to failure over time, so we should definitely take care of that while we're in here. So we're gonna start with that and then start reassembling. The last time I was working on this, after I was done filming with you guys, off camera I ended up noticing that my 5th gear seal was actually crooked in there, and that was leading to some oil seepage, as well as I can see that this shifter is leaking as well. So I ended up already doing a little bit of tear down on this part. I pulled the seal, pulled the quad seal, this shaft seal here, but I've not done the shifter seal, so that's where we're at. I'm sorry I missed those couple of steps on camera. All right, to pop this seal out, it's just a thin layer of metal, so I'm gonna go ahead and actually pop a little hole in it with my pick here. Okay, now I can get an angled pick in there and just pry it right out. Important thing is to not scar up our shaft here or on the outside here. All right, so first time was a failure, kind of blew the hole out. We're gonna try something new here. So we poked a little hole with our pick again. We're gonna thread a screw in. Again, we wanna be careful not to screw up the inner or outer face of this. We're gonna see if we can't get it with a set of pliers here. Boom, easy money. As you can see, we did not go anywhere near any of the faces that we talked about not messing up, so that's a win. This seal was totally blown. To protect this, we're gonna go ahead and put a little bit of oil on here just to help the seal slide over the shaft here. And then I did put some electrical tape so that it's not riding across those gear teeth. So now we're gonna wanna get a socket, the correct size. We've got a 17 here. That's gonna seat just right over the outer face of this metal part. Okay, with our seal successfully pressed in, we'll put our washer back over, and then we just need to get our clip back in. Now there is a false landing right after these teeth. That is not the groove that this ring sits in. You gotta go further back. You gotta pull the shaft out. There we go. I'm carefully just cleaning up where the quad seal rides before I put the new one back in. All right, this is our James gaskets kit. We're not gonna use everything. We've got stuff like the starter seal and the bearing seal, but those are now different now that we have a different style bearing. So not all this is gonna get used, but we have our 5th gear seal. We have our quad seal, so we're gonna start with those. Here is our quad seal. It is a 4-way seal. It's very, very important that we get this lined up properly. And put a little bit of grease on it. I'll be honest, I'm not a huge fan of how many seals are on these transmissions. Our quad seal is on and seated correctly. Next up is going to be our 5th gear seal, which is gonna run all the way around here. We wanna make sure that this mating surface is all clean. As you see, we've got our sprung lip seal design again. That's gonna go in this way. It's gonna go around like this, and then this guy will just seat right in. Making sure that we're pressing this in nice and evenly. A little bit of grease here. Slips right in and presses up against that quad seal. So we have our 5th gear seal in, we have our quad seal in. Hopefully they don't leak, or I'm gonna wanna cry. So we're gonna go ahead and tape up the splined part of the shaft here before we press on this seal that rides in here. Funny enough, the stock Harley-Davidson throttle tube is the perfect size for this seal. As you can see, it lands perfectly on the seal, top and bottom. It'd be ideal if it was all the way around, but it's close enough. It's gonna allow us to tap it in straight without touching the inner seal. That's a very, very important aspect of it. All right, you can tell that is all the way seated, nice and straight. Seal looks perfect still. And there you have it. That is the transmission seal portion of this project. We've got our new 5th gear seal, new quad seal. I don't know what that seal is called, but it's new too. And our shifter seal. I'm gonna leave this tape on. That way when I'm putting the primary back on, we don't mess that seal up, because that is still gonna be, slipping on up to here. So yeah, that's that. I think from here we're good to put our shift linkage back on. A little bit of blue Loctite here. I believe that's supposed to be torqued to 22 foot-pounds. So next up is gonna be our pulley. We're gonna make sure that we've got our belt back on there. All right, sprocket on. We've got some red Loctite on the threads there. We're gonna run this nut down, torque it to 55 foot-pounds. Don't forget it is a reverse thread. Once we have it torqued 55 foot-pounds, I'm actually gonna make a Sharpie mark where it's at. That way, when I go an additional 30 to 45 degrees, no more than 45 degrees, I'll know that I've done that. Because I've got it locked in gear right now to stop this from spinning, but the rear wheel does have a habit to spin because there's not much weight back there. So it's a little bit difficult to get it that additional 30 to 45 degrees, but we do the best we can. All right, so here you can see this was our original mark. It was originally straight up, but the wheel spun a little bit. This was our 90-degree mark. Right in the middle would have been 45 here. So we went about 45. Let's see how we did with our locking ring here. You get 4 different options. So it looks like I would have to go back a little bit. Or we can do that. Boom. We're in there. A little bit of Loctite. If I'm correct with the manual here, should be 100 inch-pounds on these 2 Allens. All right, hopefully you guys can hear me okay. It is raining cats and dogs on the shop roof right now. It's like our first big rain as summer ends. Like it's here, summer's over. It's heartbreaking, but we're going off of vibes here. I have no clue how this all needs to go together in terms of like order of operations from here on out. But obviously we are gonna need some shift linkage before we put the inner primary back on. So I'm gonna do that next. I don't know what the torque spec is on that. I think I'm just gonna go 20 foot-pounds. Next up, we're gonna put our O-ring on like so. Well, according to my calculations, we're pretty much ready to throw the inner primary back on. I'm really not 100% sure. I could end up starting to put it on and go, oh crap, I forgot XYZ. So we shall see. But first thing, we got this sleeve that goes on our starter shaft, like so. Don't forget we have our O-ring already on here. And there is one other thing that we need to do. There is a little spring that goes, it's like a spring washer that goes around our shift shaft here. And that makes sure that it keeps it off of rubbing on the inner primary the whole time. Right, here is our little wavy spring washer guy. It's just gonna go just like that. We've got our inner primary here. It's almost ready to go on the bike. I think I could put it on the bike as it is. We already have that new bearing pressed in and new starter seal as well as our main shaft seal here. But I think I want to put this shift shaft tube in now. I don't see any reason why I couldn't do it once it was on the bike, but I think I'll do it now. We got 2 O-rings here. I'm gonna put a little bit of oil on them, stick it in. Factory, this is a plastic piece. This is an upgraded billet aluminum one from FXR division. They also sent out a retaining triangle piece that goes in there, bolts in. I had to buy the hardware separately. This is all stuff I didn't know that I needed until I started this job. So really, if you want to do this in a weekend and you don't want this to take, you know, a few weeks like it has for me, if this is your only bike or you're doing this during the summer, definitely do your research. There are a few different really good like forum posts on this where people have gone through everything and dropped part numbers and all that. I found that stuff late once I already realized that I was missing things. So just something to keep in mind. So we've got our 2 O-rings and then we have a 3rd seat here. That's where that triangular piece is gonna set in. So this should be a nice tight squeeze. Then we have our triangular piece here, which is going to sit on that shifter shaft tube little recess. Here's our hardware we picked up. Nice stainless Allen and a lock washer. This is a 5/16 bolt and it's a 3/4 inch length. And I'm gonna torque it to 22 foot-pounds. Okay, before our inner primary is done and ready to go on the bike, we have one more crucial step that nobody tends to mention in videos, but if you read the manual, it says that all of the mating surfaces on the back side of the inner primary are supposed to be siliconed. I don't know why I'm not seeing that in people's videos. It's pretty logical when you have this full of oil and you don't have any seals with those bolts on the other side. These mating surfaces, if those are not, you know, sealed up, it's gonna leak. So not sure why people don't show that, but we're gonna use red RTV. It just says to use a silicone based gasket maker or sealant, but we're gonna go with high temp since it's gonna be high temp. So don't need much, but definitely some. Realistically, the bottom half is really the part that we're worried about, because that's where it's gonna be obviously the most likely to leak. I've even heard of some people not sealing the top, but I'm gonna do every mating surface. The nice thing about this is there's no harm in going too thick. You're not gonna see it, You know, you're not gonna gunk up any internal parts by doing this. Yeah, there's really no reason to not just get a nice thick bead on here. All right, so here's what we've got. I ended up going all the way around the mating surface here and where the O-ring will sit, but left that inner machine surface completely alone. A little bit of it might get around there, but we'll be able to see that because we'll be working on the inside of that. Also went around the shifter tube seal. There's only a singular O-ring in there, so I decided to just double it up with that. No need to hit this mating surface because that's obviously going to be where the shifter shaft goes through. We've got our bottom mating surface here and our top mating surface there, which is completely unnecessary, but we did it. I've got to be honest, as I'm going through reassembling this transmission, an inner primary, Harleys do have a lot of potential failure points, all right? I really like these motorcycles. They're a lot of fun. They're torque monsters. You know, I enjoy the heck out of them. But from an engineering standpoint, there's so many extra failure points just by design. I mean, siliconing all of these, all the gaskets, all the O-rings. I mean, there are some like Yamahas and Hondas and stuff like that that have like 6 seals on the entire engine. So this is just a little bit much to me, but it works. I mean, once these are sealed, they're not gonna leak. Like, you know, it's not really a problem. It's just a lot. It's just a lot. Tell you what, at this point, putting all this sealant and stuff on these, if I realize that I missed something or forgot something, I'm gonna lose my mind. Really hope this doesn't have to come back off for any reason. Okay, I searched and searched through the manual and online for a torque sequence for this. I can't find one. I'm gonna go with what's logical to me, which is starting in the middle and working my way out. They say 25 to 29 foot-pounds. I'm just gonna go like 26 or 27, whatever it is, somewhere around there. And yeah, should be fine. Oh no. What the heck? All right, well, this is the not so awesome side of working on stuff. Happens more often than you'd think, and I hate it. So, yeah, you know, I said I hope I didn't have to take this stuff back off because now I've done all this, putting it back together and sealing it, and it's got to come back off. As you guys just saw, I was torquing the last bolt. So it wasn't even torqued, it was just hand tight and it went right in. And as soon as I went to torque it, it popped and went no threads. So then I checked online and apparently it's pretty common that you can actually pull the threads out. I don't know if they're like helicoiled in like factory instead of being threaded into the actual case, but all the threads just came right out on the bolt. And yeah, so everything has to come back apart. And I need to drill it out bigger, tap it, helicoil it. This job should have taken like 4 hours. Cause I was thinking like, man, you know, this isn't so bad, you know? But it's pretty bad. I don't like this at all. So fortunately there's a ton of meat on the engine case there to drill it out and tap it. But yeah. All right, so here is our culprit. I'll put some light on here so you guys can see. So these ones are all fine. Hopefully you guys can see that okay. But when we get down here, you can see that the threads are totally chewed up. And then the bolt is totally fine. Like the threads are completely fine. There was literally no indication that there was gonna be any sort of an issue, or obviously I would have, you know, just taken it slow and or backed it out and chased the threads out. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've had something stupid like this happen. So a little bit frustrating, really, really frustrating. I have surgery in 2 days and then I won't be able to lift or move or do anything heavy. So I don't know if this is gonna get done or not. I can pretty much bet that it's not unless I take care of this tomorrow morning. So that's that. We're gonna let this silicone and stuff honestly just dry at this point because it's kind of like really gummy right now. I'm just gonna let it totally dry. That way I can just scrape it off and it'll be easier that way. So yeah, I guess tomorrow or whenever I will drill that hole out, chase new threads in, and helicoil it. This was definitely already a helicoil. Nice. That makes sense.